Well, hello and good morning, Helen.
Hello, how are you?
I'm very well. How are you?
I'm very well as well. It's a lovely sunny morning.
It certainly is beautiful down here on the beach. So, I've invited you here today for a very special reason to talk about something very important that could help many people all over the world. That is IBS, and specifically hypnosis for IBS, which I don't know if many people would think to use that. I want to hear all about your experience in it, what insights you can share for people suffering with it, and how hypnosis can help. So maybe we could begin with a little introduction from yourself. Who are you? What have you been doing? What do you do?
So my name's Helen Wyer. I run something called Advanced Hypnotherapy. I work in person, seeing people in a town called Ipswich in Suffolk, and I also work online. So I do a good mix, which suits me fine because I have clients all over the UK and quite a lot abroad. I think the furthest I've worked is Pakistan and Brazil. But often it's more European destinations. I'd love them to fly me out, but they go, no, sorry, we'll do it on Zoom instead, so I don't get the holiday. I've been doing this for 6 years, I think now. Used to be a deputy head teacher, got out of that and started my own practice, and it's extremely busy. I see about 4 to 5 people a day most days. So yeah, it's going very well, and I love it. And think I wish I'd made the change a long time ago.
Mm, amazing. Well, I'm very happy to hear that for you. So, what got you into hypnotherapy from being a teacher?
I think without realizing, I was sent on a course because it was a coaching course because we became well known in our area. And we had student teachers come and work with us. And we also had a lot of teachers from other schools come and observe and things like that. So I was sent on a coaching course because, it was deemed to be how you would help support these people. And I think when I was there, I thought, hang on, I've actually been doing this, teaching my students in a coaching way, almost without realizing, just been doing it almost intuitively and naturally because I needed to get results, and the way I was working wasn't doing it, so I had to do something different. But it was on that course, because it wasn't a teaching coaching course, it was just a general one. And I can remember looking around and thinking, oh my goodness, everybody is so excited. The energy in the room was amazing. Now, if anybody listening has ever been on a teaching course, most people are run into the ground. Most people are there, they don't really want to be there. You're trying to get something from it, and all the time thinking, well, how am I supposed to fit this into an already packed day? So it was very, very different from what I'd ever experienced before. And I just loved it. I came home buzzing. Nobody ever comes home from a teaching course buzzing, really, but I really, really was buzzing. And then I thought, well, I'd like to take this further. So I self-funded because a lot of people when we were there were talking about this thing called NLP that I'd never even heard about. So I funded an NLP course, and from there I met a lot of people, these people who called themselves hypnotherapists. Again, it wasn't a term that I'd ever really heard. My experience of hypnosis was probably thinking the classic one, thinking of the pendulum, thinking of somebody doing this, you going asleep and clucking like a chicken or something, because I'd just seen odd excerpts on the TV or something like that. But I had no idea that there was this whole thing out there called hypnotherapy, and they were actually helping people. And it was through a couple of sort of connections that I made there that I thought, well, I'm going to look into this. I was very quickly going to burnout with teaching, and I needed to make a change. And I'd been looking for about the last 2 or 3 years, but didn't really know what to change into. And this just fitted. So went on a couple of courses, trained, and gave in my notice in the March, I think it was. You have to give a term's notice, and started seeing people in the September. So yeah, it was really exciting.
Amazing. So you've taken some of your communication skills, your leadership skills into a new role of helping people, a new way of helping people.
I think somebody said to me once when I was leaving, they weren't very impressed that I was leaving teaching, having, they were going, oh, it's such a shame, you're a really good teacher and what a waste of money and experience. But I honestly believe that had I not have had all that teaching experience, I wouldn't be the hypnotherapist I am now, because it teaches you so much about all sorts of different people. Little adults are just little people grown up, and we all learn in different ways. We've all got our own different personalities. There's no one size fits all approach, and I think I knew that anyway from teaching, and so I was able to bring that easily into what I do now.
Yeah, I can imagine. That's brilliant. So I've seen you help people with a wide array of issues, and one of those being irritable bowel syndrome, which I specifically wanted to talk about today. So could you perhaps explain what irritable bowel syndrome is, what constitutes it, perhaps what causes it?
So I'll give a whistle-stop tour then, because that subject in itself could probably take an hour or so to talk about. So
Sure.
irritable bowel syndrome, it's recognized, they call it a functional gastro, whatever it was, I can't think of the scientific word for it, syndrome. And the key word there is syndrome. And it tends to be, if you look into any reading, if you do any research about it, what it actually is, it's diagnosed on elimination. So what that means is they're looking and going, well, it's not this, it's not that, it's not cancer, it's not Crohn's disease, it's not that, it's not that. Do you see what I'm saying there?
Yeah.
Because they don't really know, you know, there's 21 possible symptoms that people can exhibit. Now, the classic ones we all tend to know about: diarrhea, constipation, bloating, and pain, and things like that. They're the three classic ones, but it comes with a whole heap of other ones, and there's 21 of them. And I think it's called the Rome criteria. And you have to have exhibited over 3 months, at least I think it's 4 of them, for 3 days out of every week to be diagnosed with it. Now, a lot of people, they've been quite frightened because they've been going, well, we're just going to rule out that it's not cancer. So they'll be sent for scans, sometimes colonoscopies, things like that, which can, they're not the nicest of things, investigations to have happen. So, a lot of people have been through some really quite horrible situations there. Okay. Now, also, why does it start? And it's a bit like saying there are multiple reasons. Again, nobody really knows. Wouldn't it be easier if somebody could say, well, it starts because of that? It can be all sorts of different things. Quite often, it can be one really big, major, stressful event. Like a death in the family. I remember working with somebody, and she said she had a phone call at home, very unexpected, and just being told, you need to get to hospital now. Your mother's had the most terrible accident, and we think she's going to pass away in about 2 hours. Get here right this very moment. And she said, I remember from that rushing to the toilet, and from there on it started. Sometimes it can be a build-up of lots of different stresses, and maybe at work, home, all that sort of thing. It can result from about, I've worked with somebody very recently, it resulted from a bout of horrible food poisoning, and then that kind of inflamed the gut. It can be from people doing, especially girls that have done, say, what I call faddy diets, and things, that haven't eaten particularly that well or healthily, and then that hasn't suited that particular person. So there can be loads of different things that can start it all off.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I've sort of seen similar things myself, having been seeing people for a few years now. And sometimes it could be many years in the past that
Yeah.
it's just
And
sort
then
of
sets up a program of and the gut just continues to work like that.
so it's always tricky when you go to the doctor and they say, we don't know. We don't know what it is. It's like, I thought you would. I thought that's what you guys do. But some of these things, I suppose, are a bit more mysterious than that. And if it's not necessarily something physical that they can see, then it's tricky to know what to do.
I
So,
think I always say to people that the symptoms, of course, they're physical because people are rushing to the toilet all the time with diarrhea, or they cannot go. I remember having a phone call with somebody, and she said, "I literally have not been for 3.5 weeks. I'm in real pain, as you would be." And people get very much the bloating, the pain, the distension. The symptoms are very, very physical. Of course, they are, but there's nothing physically wrong with the gut. It's not being twisted. It's not that there's a growth in there or anything like that. It literally is this inflammation that happens because of the amount of cortisol and adrenaline that's surging around the gut there. Because obviously, go back to caveman days, that cortisol and adrenaline, when we were stressed, it was meant to go into the big thigh muscles for us to run away from the dinosaur from. But obviously, nowadays, half the time when we get stressed or anxious, we're in a meeting at work, we're on a train, we're sitting at home, that adrenaline and cortisol has nowhere to go, and it goes around the gut, and it sets up this kind of thing in the gut to say, right, get rid of everything, as in the diarrhea, so you can run away from that dinosaur really quickly. Or it stops digestion because it doesn't want your energy going into digesting food, because you could be running away from that dinosaur faster. And the adrenal glands sit just on top of the kidneys, and they leak out into the gut. And then obviously the vagus nerve goes from the back of the brain down the spinal column into it, picks up minute changes. And that's how it all kind of starts. So it's a very physical thing. Of course it is, with an emotional root cause. Does that make sense?
yeah, absolutely. So, in that case, I assume decreasing the stress is going to in turn decrease that inflammation, those stressful hormones, and reduce the symptoms, if not eliminate them entirely. Is that the
Yeah.
plan?
Absolutely. And I mean, there's so much scientific research. I mean, there's papers upon papers upon papers where people, the scientists have looked into the effects of hypnotherapy or hypnosis on IBS symptoms. And I think that and stop smoking are the two things for hypnosis that have the most scientific evidence base. There's heaps and heaps of papers, and they all say it either reduces or eliminates symptoms drastically. And there's actually, I think his name is Dr. Peter Werwell or Warwell. I might have pronounced that wrong, but he's in a hospital up Manchester area, and he designed a whole protocol for up in these hospitals. I think it was called gut directed hypnotherapy or something like that, and he advocates about 12 sessions for somebody to go through to see this reduction. And quite a few NHS staff, I think it depends on the area you're in and the funding they've got and things like that, have been trained in his specific protocol. They're not hypnotherapists as such. So it's very much what I would call a script-based approach. So that's probably why it's the whole 12 sessions. And because I would imagine, I don't know this, so I can't quite, but I would imagine it's done very much on a manual of, you do this in lesson one, in session one, this in session two. Whereas I think most hypnotherapists like you are, we're much more intuitive with how we deal with things and working to what the person presents. So
Hmm.
does that make sense too?
Yeah, definitely. And do they still get results like that still
Yeah,
working
they
with that
do. I think they say it
strategic?
dramatically reduces, the effects of it. Again, I haven't really looked into that. I just know in great detail. I just know that that's what he does. And the NHS, I think it's the and also the NICE, the National Institute of Clinical Evidence. They say how good hypnosis is for helping to reduce or eliminate IBS symptoms. And it's on many NHS websites about one of the things you can do is meditation, hypnosis. It's one of the things, mindfulness. It's one of the things that they actually advocate for helping, because really all they can do is medicate.
Mm.
And a lot of people do not want to be on Imodium or can't think what the word is, the other one, the unblockers, for laxatives. So, they don't want to be on them for life. Well, you can get tablets that help with pain. Again, you've really either got to come to terms with the fact you'll be on them for life because you're managing the symptoms,
Mm.
or you sort it all out and then you don't need the medication anyway because the symptoms have diminished hugely.
Yeah. Well, what a relief it would be to hear that that is possible then. And great to hear that hypnosis is being recommended by the NHS.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, um, I've got a question that maybe you'll be able to answer, as it's been a bit of a mystery to me. As I heard the gut being referred to as a second brain. Any idea why that is?
Yeah, and it really, really is that. And the science now has established that there's as many brain receptors in the gut as there is in the brain. I mean, if you think about language that we've used since the year dot, we talk about things, don't we? We say, I've had a gut reaction. Oh, I feel it in my gut. And I always am a great believer in thinking, well, those kind of phrases, they must have come about somewhere, even if somebody didn't understand the science behind it. But talking to a local consultant, chatting to him about things, and he was saying now they used to think everything was brain sent down to the gut. The messages went just one way, but they've actually established that there are twice as many messages going from the gut upwards to the brain. Well, that was like really a
Wow.
kind of wow moment for me and for them, I think, actually, so
Mm,
to hear that. So yeah, I'm a great believer in what you just said there. It really is the second brain.
yeah, that's fascinating.
Mm.
Uh, Amazing. So in that case, a lot of people might think their symptoms are a result of food and diet. Is that the case?
Again, I would say let's use a bit of common sense here. I mean, I do not get involved in nutrition or diet advice. I'm not a dietitian, so I feel that's outside my scope of practice. But I've never found I have to get involved in it
Mm,
because what I do helps with that. But let's have a bit of common sense here. I always say to somebody, very occasionally you come across something that just doesn't agree with you. Now, the trend at the moment, if you go out for a meal, everything is sourdough, pizza based sourdough, bread, sourdough, this, that, and the other. I have no idea why, but that disagrees with me.
mm,
So I don't eat it. Does that mean I've got IBS? No, it doesn't. It just purely disagrees with me. And I would say to somebody, sometimes you might, as you get older as well, your digestion changes and things. So things that maybe you used to eat disagree with you now. And that doesn't mean you've got IBS. It just means to be okay, mindful of that. For some reason, cauliflower, is a bit it doesn't agree with me like it used to do when I was younger.
mm,
Sometimes if people have a really hot curry, if you're a curry eater or something, and maybe they put loads and loads of spices and chilies in, that can have an effect, but again, it just means, okay, that perhaps was a little bit too hot for me. My digestion prefers more mild things. But it doesn't mean to say, it's anything to do with IBS. So I don't get involved with diet, but I think all of us probably will have one or two things, maybe in life, if not now, then at some point in life, that just purely disagree with this, and that's simply what it is.
Yeah, makes sense. Coffee and
Yeah,
fizzy drinks,
and,
energy
and
drinks.
absolutely, and coffee, and I think fizzy drinks again. There's loads of science behind that about how they stimulate, the bowel, the digestive system. They're known as stimulants, aren't they? Coffee and things like that. Well, it doesn't just stimulate, say, the brain and whatever. It stimulates everything. So again, if it's something that people notice, then don't drink it. You see, it's as simple as that in my world.
Hmm. Yeah, it should be quite noticeable as well, I think, when you put something in your body, and it will have a pretty immediate effect. You'll notice it
Mm,
pretty quickly.
mm.
Yeah, it's the things that just seem to come about from nowhere
I
and
mean, sometimes as I've
linger
worked
around.
with somebody, and there's been things that say like coffee or whatever, but because we've then changed other things, sometimes they've then, 6 months' time sent me an email or a text or something. Do you know what? So, I've just introduced it slowly and it's been okay. So again, it's
Hmm.
just all sorts of things, just noticing what's going on. And as I say, they've perhaps reintroduced it and not gone crazy. If you've never drunk coffee and suddenly you're drinking 8 cups in a day, for most people, that's going to have an effect. But just seeing what happens, because everything else has calmed down. The whole central nervous system and the whole digestive system have calmed. Well, let's just see what happens then.
Right, well, that's good news. You don't want to be missing out on coffee.
Absolutely.
Yeah. So, do you implement any other sort of therapeutic techniques other than hypnotizing a person, or any other lifestyle changes? What else is involved?
Um, do I? No, I think
Obvious,
it's purely hypnosis, as long as what I would say a good smattering of just common sense, sort of
right?
thing. And also explaining how the body works,
Yeah.
because it has absolutely amazed me. Now, I never taught science, I covered classes and things like that, but I stopped teaching science once people got to about 11 years old. So my science, knowledge is not that great. But it still amazes me how everybody, when they first come to see me, because my first session, I spend a lot of time explaining how the gut and the mind, how it all works, about when we get stressed or anxious, as say we get this flood of adrenaline and cortisol, and that sets up then, for some people diarrhea, for some people constipation. I'll do it in a bit of a longer way than I'm just quickly explaining to you. And the number of people say, oh my goodness, I didn't have a clue. I didn't understand the link there. And so that
Mm.
can immediately help people feel better straight away, that it's not their body attacking them, which is a lot of what people feel. I'll hear people say things like, my guts just do not like me. And it's like, no, they're just functioning how they were designed to function. So if that is a technique, just doing what I would call a basic explanation of how, and it is basic, but just saying, look, your body isn't out to get, it's just doing what it was designed to do, going back, to caveman days. That can take off an awful lot of angst and fear for people.
It's really interesting that when you're left in the dark and you don't know what this abnormal thing is happening to you, and your mind spins and comes up with all these things that are wrong with you, and it just perpetuates it. So, is it just enough to break that cycle and give some clarity, some understanding, allow a person to relax and see themselves, see the world in a more positive way, that it's not that there's something wrong with you. Like you say, it's doing what it's supposed to do. That's enough to just, like you say, calm everything down.
And just give a basic understanding. And as you said, a lot of people, you said, look, when you're in the dark, and people have been in the dark about what's going on for quite some time, or they've been told, well, we just need to eliminate this, and whatever. And a lot of people have been quite scared, by what's been happening. So not only for some people, you've also got, well, they've got a high level of stress, anxiety in life anyway. And then it's made even worse by, oh my goodness, what's wrong with me? Have I got cancer? Is there something really wrong with my dad? What if I'm stuck like this forever? And so the whole thing just turns into this cycle of yeah, not feeling great, and the whole thing just continues going around in this spiral.
Okay. So the explanation is fundamental. And then what will you do? Go about teaching a person how to relax, how to find that place of peace and calm that perhaps they can take
Again,
away with
it's
them?
it's very dependent on each person, but I would say
Mhm.
fundamentally. So I've got a so whereas Dr. Peter, well, he advocates at least, and that's the at least 12 sessions. So some people more. I have a particular program that I offer for people, which is 5 sessions. Okay. Now, some people need the whole 5 sessions, and we're doing real like work the whole way they through. Some people very quickly, start to have symptoms just almost disappear. And I then, in that last session, will start teaching them. Well, actually, everybody I teach things like self-hypnosis and things like that. But in my experience, it will take those 5 sessions to really have a significant decrease in symptoms. Or most people, I would say, just go, well, it's fine now. I'm absolutely fine. And they get their life back, because a lot of people, when they contact me, the phrase I hear over and over and over again is, my world has shrunk. Because people literally they'll still then start getting scared about going on holiday, going, I don't know, going up to where we are here, going up to London, because being on a train, well, what if the toilets are out of action? What if I get to the station and I can't find a toilet in a hurry? What if I'm out and about and I get these terrible pains and gripiness in my tummy, and they just literally hardly go anywhere. So people's world really, really shrinks. And then, of course, that brings on another whole set of emotions about things. So there's lots of different things that you're doing all at the same time. I mean, I actually teach a course for other hypnotherapists, because I'm very busy. So
Mm.
I'm more than happy for anybody. So I teach with Anthony Jacquin. We've got a course that we teach other hypnotherapists my way of working with people. So because yeah, I need more people because I have a 2 or 3 week waiting list, and people want to be seen quicker than that, sooner than that. So
Mm. Well, that's good. Good to hear. Yeah, good to hear you're spreading it to other hypnotherapists so more people can be seen. That's great. Maybe I'll join you.
please do.
Yeah. And maybe before we wrap up, could you describe well, one question I had actually was, so you're changing the mind, which in turn changes the body. I'm just thinking, I'm imagining a person, like you say, who's on a train and usually has that sense of, where's the toilet, or am I going to get there in time? Is there an element of perhaps control? Because I don't know how the gut works, how the bowel works. Um, but I imagine there's this feeling of kind of holding it. And is that, does that, I guess that response changes in some way.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people, especially with the diarrhea, if people tend to be very much the diarrhea side of it, and general rule of thumb, that tends to be fear, stress, and anxiety. Or the constipation side tends to be more of a just angry at what's going on, angry at the world, all things like that. Now, my basic take on that is if we are angry, we get it's a hot feeling, and that maybe dries out all the whole bodily fluids and things like that. But with the diarrhea one, a lot of people, this urgency of I need to go and I need to go now. And a lot of people I have seen have had accidents in public places, and they are absolutely mortified that that has happened, truly so embarrassed and things. So again, there's lots of different things you can help to with those. But then, we know as hypnotherapists, that sets up that protective part. Well, don't put yourself in that position again. Remember how stressful it was, how upset you were, how embarrassed you were, and things. So it's sometimes we may need to use techniques to let them go and reassess what happened back then, and start just eliminating the whole anxiety that's in their life and anxiety around life, and get their gastro system, digestive system working in an appropriate manner. So there's lots of things all going on at the same time in the system that I teach.
Okay, makes more sense. I think I'm getting it. That's good. Cool. So perhaps you could share, while remaining anonymous, some success stories. Just, I know, some good things you've seen.
Oh, it's difficult to choose. It really, really is, because there are so many.
Yeah.
I always say to people, I went into teaching essentially to make a difference. And the government and all that, what it told me I had to do, got in the way. But doing what I do now, it really makes a difference, and that's why I love it. I love going into work every day and seeing people, because you just see them changing before your eyes, and that's great to hear. Now, one of the stories that I love, and there's actually a picture of the dog, because Freddie Jacquin asked me to write a book, write a chapter in his book about how I work with hypnotherapists. Typical, I can't find it now. Here we go. Now, that little doggy there, don't know if you can see.
Yeah.
Okay, now so I got a thank you card from a dog. Okay, but now this little doggy had been walked round and round just a few houses on the block, so to speak, where this gentleman lived, because he said if I took the dog for a walk round and round these houses, I knew I was never more than 30 meters away from my house, and I could dash back to use the bathroom. So I got this thank you card from a dog with a big muddy footprint in the middle of it, going, I've been across the fields, I've actually been to the
Oh.
park, and things like that. And it was just one of the loveliest thank you cards I've ever had. And then this summer, somebody's been to Kos with their family, because again, there's often a lot of guilt around from people around, well, because I don't go anywhere, nor can my family, we don't go on holiday anymore, and things like that. And she'd gone with her children and her husband, and I'm sure it was Kos in Greece or somewhere like that. And she said, it's the first time I've been abroad for about 20 years. First time, actually, she said, I've been further than probably about an hour from my house in 20 years, so that was huge. And that's the sort of thing that you're hearing. Somebody said, I just jump on a train now, without even giving it a second thought. Whereas before I'd been, or somebody else I remember working with, he traveled, I think in COVID, he'd been able to work a lot from home. And then as things started opening up, he had to travel a lot up motorways. And that's why, again, he said, I can't do this. It's just, he said, I'm plotting every service station with a loo on all my journeys. And sometimes they're over 3/4 of an hour away from each other. And I can't do that. That's why he came. And I always remember him sending me an email and just going, it's truly liberating. He said, I drive around the country now. I just think to myself, oh, car needs refueling, and don't ever even think about where is the next toilet and things. So it's things like that that you hear that make you think, wow, I love my job and I want to go and help more people, because it's really the impact is huge. I actually get people quite cross afterwards when we've worked together, because they go, why didn't I know about this sooner? Why have I never been told that this is even a thing? And I say to them, well, do you know what? I didn't know. I've never had IBS or anything, but I'd never even knew that there was a link, and till I started practicing. And I say, but please spread the word for me. Please. I usually write to their GPs and their consultants after they've been to see me, because you're just spreading the word all the time that this really, really is an amazing treatment for people.
That is fantastic. And yeah, it just makes me feel a little warm inside hearing about that little dog. That's some amazing stories.
Yeah,
So fantastic. So if anybody listening has been suffering with these kinds of issues, I recommend getting in touch with either myself or Helen.
thank you.
As yeah, thank you very much for joining me today.
You're welcome.
And where can people find you then?
So they can always email me at helen@advancehypnotherapy.biz. That's BIZ at the end. That's the easiest way to get in contact with me. You can go to my website, www.advancehypnotherapy.biz, and there's a contact form on there, or my phone number. So any of those ways. And I always say to people, I haven't been able to look at my website for a while. I think I laughed, didn't I, and said to you, it's not the greatest, but I'm too busy seeing people to actually spend time working on it. So I'll apologize for that now. But
It does.
I'd rather see people and help them out with it rather than spend a couple of days sorting it out. So
Well, it does the job, and as we've seen, so do you.
thank you.
Great. Well, I will speak with you again very soon.
Good. Lovely to speak with you, and thank you for having me as a guest.
Thanks for coming.